This workshop is going to be about a system that we have been working on for a couple of years at our school. It is by no means perfect at the moment, but it's a system that we have received very positive feedback on from the teachers, from educational management, also from customers, and IH World and Equals identified it as a point of excellence in their inspection last year. I'd like to get started by giving you a definition of what we mean by mentoring system, but before I do that, could you please, in groups of 3 or 4, discuss what, in your understanding, makes a good mentoring system, and does your school have one? Okay, so just take 3 minutes. What makes a good mentoring system? Does your school have one? Lots of interesting ideas, and I really hope that we will cover most of these during the workshop, or if not, you can ask questions at the end. One thing I kind of heard a lot was whether a mentoring system was the same as the induction, and I'd just like to say that the system that I'm going to talk about today is not really an induction kind of system, so it's not your very first steps. The reason for that is IH Budapest is a larger school with about 50 teachers, and so there is no way I could handle the mentoring program on my own, whereas I like to be part of the induction very much myself for all the new teachers. So this is not going to be about first copy codes and how you find your way around the city and that kind of thing. The most important feature of our system is that it's a system about support and not about assessment. So while it does include the compulsory elements of quality control, the formal observations and the PDI are also done by the mentor, it's primarily about support, so it goes beyond the compulsory element. And I think the good thing about it is that it goes beyond it exactly the way the teachers want, because it's a system that's designed to give the teacher control over their professional development. The person who helps them achieve these goals of professional development is their mentors. At the moment, these include teacher trainers, our senior teacher, the ADOS, and myself. And the very heart of the system is our range of mentoring tools. Can you see these sort of okay from the back? I'll zoom in on them, but I'll very quickly talk you through them, and then we'll do feedback on whether your ideas of a mentoring system were very different to ours. So like I said, compulsory elements, the formal observation, and the PDI, or performance review. But apart from this, there is peer observation that the teachers can choose. This can be one of 2 things. The mentee can observe someone, or the mentee can be observed by someone. A mentor observation, which is again one of these 2 things. So it could be the mentee watching the mentor, or a mentor watching the mentee. A lot of our less experienced teachers ask for this a lot, who are scared of their first formal observation, because this is a very relaxed, very informal kind of trial run of that. A seminar talk-through is a discussion and then implementation of approaches or activities from our Friday seminar program that the teachers take part in to kind of keep a better record of that with the mentor. An absent observation we usually resort to when for some reason it would be difficult to observe a class because the student might object to it, the company might object to it, or there could be timetable clashes that the mentor and the mentee teach at the same time, and then it just doesn't work. Assisted lesson planning is when a mentee chooses a specific group, a specific occasion, a specific problem area, and then they sit down with the mentor and plan a lesson around that. And finally, team teaching with the mentor is an option. This basically means sharing a class with the mentor, which is quite common practice at IH Budapest, as in sharing classes. So once again, here are all the tools. These are the optional elements, the key features of the system. Is there anyone who had in mind something completely different when I said mentoring system?
Yes.
Okay, what was it?
What do you think about pastoral mentoring? Because a lot of times teachers who come out of the country, their first time out there, and they don't know how to assimilate themselves into sort of the local culture. So someone is there to show them where to get a SIM card, or where to go for a pub or drink or something like that. So pastoral mentoring, what do you think about that?
We're probably a little bit special in this regard because we're a big teacher training center, and I'd say 90% of the teachers we take on have just completed the CELTA in Budapest, so they've already been in the country for a month and they kind of know their way around. Having said that, there is a kind of an induction quiz that a more experienced teacher will do with that person, and that teacher is their kind of first point of contact. So if it's a question like SIM card, then yeah, they can do that. But I think it's because of our context, we don't really need that. I can imagine in other situations it would be very important. Anyone else who had something very different? Okay, so here are all these tools, and I'd like you to look at them a little bit closer and try to rank them, so in order of preference. A, what do you think a teacher would most like to do, would be most excited to do? And then B, how about mentors? You yourself as director of studies, or the people who would be mentors in your institution, which of these do you think would be their favorites, and which of these would they not really like? Again, can I just give you 3 or 4 minutes, from the teachers and then from the mentors' point of view, a ranking of preference in the same groups. Let me show you what IH Budapest teachers think. And before you make any comments about this, I've just been reminded to use a microphone. So sorry, whenever you guys have a question, we'll wait a little bit so you can get the microphone. Otherwise, the camera can't hear what you say. Okay. So this is the teacher's choice. Can you read it okay from the back? Okay. Let me just bring up the mentor's choice as well next to this. Oh, sorry, I did not include the compulsory elements, formal observation and PDI, because I'm talking about preferences. You know, they have to do that. The one tendency that I can see from this is that the mentors, obviously, chose the elements that kind of require the least amount of intervention, involvement from the mentor. Yeah, that's fine. You want to see someone teach elementary class? Good. Why don't you go and observe Brian, who's really good? Then come back and tell me about it. Okay. And I was really pleased when I looked at all the developmental tasks that the teachers undertook this term, because there's an incredible amount of activities that require really, really high involvement on the part of the mentor. And I think that says that teachers understand that this is about support and not about assessment, because they deliberately go for the ones that are kind of high threat, high intervention in a way. Did you have very different ideas about what will happen in your school, what people would like? Please wait for the microphone if you did.
No, we actually thought that assisted lesson planning would be interesting for both, or that the mentors would enjoy imparting their experience or wisdom.
I think one of the reasons why we didn't put assisted lesson planning at the top is that we do it all the time. Someone will come up with a quick question that will take 20 minutes and, 3 resource books. We've got an open office, so there is no DOS office, DOS 8 or senior teacher, everyone sitting in the same place, and people will just constantly come up to you and ask you questions. So we kind of said, we do that anyway, so maybe not that one, but yeah. Any other big differences? Okay, so these are the key features and elements of the system. I want to tell you about 2 big changes that we have introduced since we launched the system. One of them, they're both kind of really important. One of them is how you introduce the system to teachers, and the other one is how you monitor the development. And so from this year, we always start with a first interview or a first chat. And before I tell you how we do it, I'd like your opinion about how you would go about it. So if you have a first interview where you introduce a system to the teacher, what kind of record would you keep after the interview? How long you would spend on it? And what would you and what wouldn't you talk about? There are a couple of broad ideas there to get you started. So current teaching, would you ask any questions about that? Problem students? Career plans, probably. Colleagues, I left that deliberately vague and broad. And private life, what would and wouldn't you talk about? And also how long you would take, and what written record you would keep. Again, in the same groups, can you take 3 or 4 minutes?
But can I just clarify, who is the initial contact, who with who?
Mentor with mentee, yes, sorry about that.
Oh, right.
First interview bit with mentor and mentee. What do you talk about, how long, how do you keep record of it? Let me tell you quickly kind of my answers to these questions, the way we do this. One thing that's important to point out at the beginning is that an initial contact, a first chat, ideally happens, what do you think, which month of the academic year?
When they start.
When they start, which is ideally September, often it isn't, but it's the beginning of someone's contact. So a couple of you mentioned things that I'd probably rather leave to the PDI rather than bring up at the very beginning. So in the light of that, I ask lots and lots of questions about current teaching, all classes, levels, students, any problems, do they have homework, any websites they could use to help, lots and lots of questions about current teaching. Career is one of the things that I leave for the PDI usually, unless it is a teacher who has been with us for a longer time, and so kind of for this year, what are your career plans? The last two, colleagues and private life, I don't ever directly ask about, but if the teachers bring anything up, I'm very happy to talk about that, but I'm not going to address it because I think it might be a little bit not nice. How long? Usually between half an hour and an hour, but the more important thing for us is where it happens. So like I said, we've got an open office. There is no way I could do this at my desk. So I always try and take the teacher away. Like there's a quiet corner in the corridor, there is an empty classroom, so that we can't be interrupted. So they feel this is important me time. As often the PDI is, you know, we often say that it's like individual attention for the teacher. And in terms of written record, I personally, we still haven't standardized this perfectly, I personally use teachers' timetables because that's what I ask them about the most. So we have this PDF that the system generates for a timetable, and I add my comments about levels, about needs of the students, about various techniques that the teacher has tried or problems she has. And something else that we've been trying to do very regularly this year is always send an email, a follow-up email, after the first sit down and after any later sit down. So if there is a peer observation and then we talk about it, we send an email to summarize what we talked about. We obviously file any documents like notes that are created as part of the observations in the teacher's folder, but we try to save it electronically as well. And the ideal solution we're working towards is to have all of these emails with the dates in a Word document, and then you can see what the teacher has done that term. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. Very different answers for the three questions. What you talk about, how long you take, how do you record it? And I'd like us in the remainder of the session to explore a couple of challenges that we have faced and ways to address them. Here's the first one. So when I say the school can only mentor 40, that's what we have the capacity for in terms of energy, time, or money. So we need to make decisions. Of these stereotypical and, of course, fictional teachers, who would you include in the mentoring system, who wouldn't, and why? Again, in the same groups, if you could take 3 or 4 minutes. Let me stop you there. Could you turn just a little bit towards us here at the back, because this group would like to share their opinion with you.
We said we couldn't throw anyone out of the system. They all have to stay. Because it's all of them would benefit from it, and none of them are less important than others. So, I don't know, do you agree or disagree?
They disagree, I heard it.
I suppose in an ideal world.
Sorry.
I suppose in an ideal world you're absolutely right, but given the question we had to choose one, I know which one I'd choose.
Can you tell us?
The 12 hours a week is not an inconsiderable amount of time, so they need to be in. That's quite a lot of time during a week. The person with a short contract, they might come back. They might really like the program, the mentor program. If
so part-timer 3 hours might get more hours.
True. True. Yes, that's true.
That would cost the company money, wouldn't it then? I guess. I don't know. It's difficult.
Explain. And the very experienced and slightly jaded full-timer, you can't make exceptions. Because once you make exceptions, that's the kind of thing that leads to, I was going to say revolution, but that's a bit strong. It infects the staff room.
Just to kind of disagree. I know, I'm in that mood today. But the part-timer on 3 hours a week, we actually have quite a lot of teachers who are in our evening school who are on those contracts. And they are important because some people will teach in the evening for 2 years, and then they will actually come full-time, be full-time members of staff in the day school. So it's really important that they're part of the programme and they feel part of the school, because those are really good teachers, and maybe they've got a full-time job elsewhere and they're just testing it out at your school. And you're going to end up getting a really good teacher and you're going to lose them.
Well, only because I had to choose.
Okay.
So which one, if you had to choose one?
I would actually just do it in my own time for free. I just wouldn't be able to leave anyone out. But I wouldn't leave anyone out.
We came up with an easier solution. That first person, very experienced and only slightly jaded, should be made a mentor. Yeah? Because that person is bored, because they're very experienced and they're doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is why they're slightly jaded. Make them into a mentor and they've got some responsibility, new life being breathed into them. And then you're down from 8 to only 7. So that was our conclusion.
Brilliant, thank you.
I thought the reason was that they have to pay for them to be mentors. Is that right?
We're going to talk about the money side of things. The mentoring system costs something to the school, but it's not, it's not the teachers paying for
So
it.
does his solution work, Roger? Is it Roger?
Well, it would mean you have less people, you have fewer people to worry about, because now there are 8 people out of the system, and then there are only 7. Well done.
Does anybody mentor the mentors?
Yes. Yes. Well, not all of them. The teacher trainers are kind of a different kettle of fish. I don't go near the teacher trainers. I do mentor the ADOS and the senior teacher. I think it's probably started last year when I was ADOS and I asked to be mentored and people went, ooh, but I was like, sorry, I'd like to. And so my ADOS now kind of took it for granted that he would do that, and our senior teacher is part of it as well. Yes, I think that's, that sends a positive message. Okay, any other questions or remarks about this one? Okay, let me just quickly show you what I put up for feedback. Taking part in the mentoring system is a right rather than a duty. Teachers don't have to do this. I mean, we offer it to everyone, and the only way you don't take part in it is, we're going to talk about it in a minute, you keep cancelling your developmental tasks and nothing happens, and then that will come up in your PDI. But this is an extra that the school offers to the teachers. So if I had, theoretically a full-timer who told me about getting the same feedback each year after observations, I would probably think twice about mentoring that person, because if you get the same feedback after each observation, that maybe means you're not developing. Yeah, exactly. You don't address the action points. And this is something that is probably unique to our context, but I think we're the only language school in Budapest who employ full-timers. All the other schools, and there are a lot of them, employ part-timers. So we have 8 full-timers and 40 part-timers, so most of our teachers are part-timers. If they can be part of such a system, that makes them really, really loyal to International House. And when the language schools are kind of trying to get their evenings and mornings when they are free, if we offer them something, they'll take that first. If the other school offers them something, they'll go, hang on, let me check with my daughter IH, and then I'll get back to you tomorrow. So it's an incentive for them. You get to keep the really, really good teachers, which is a positive thing about it. And an argument for mentoring the person on 3 hours, or even the person on a 2-month contract, because they might come back, it's like someone said it. Okay, next situation. Several mentors, sorry, you can read this for yourself. The question is, what systems can be introduced to address these issues? So A, to make sure that all the observations, seminar talk-throughs, lesson planning chats happen in the same way, in the same manner. And the second one, that even though the DOS only mentors 9 teachers, she kind of knows what's going on with the other 41. Okay, again with the same group. Usual 3 minutes. Okay, I'd like to think you're getting a little bit quieter, because I kind of need you to, time-wise. Yes, you are. Okay. Any solutions for the first one, the first problem? Everyone should do things the same way. Please just put your hand up so we have time to give you a microphone.
Sorry, what's your question again?
Well, the first question, what can you do to make sure that all the mentors do development tasks in the same manner, from observations to seminar talk-throughs? Sorry?
You will never get everybody to do everything the same way.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
It may also be very detrimental to try and make everyone do, the tasks in the same way. I mean, we were kind of worried here. Like, some people go in to an observation looking for what they believe they want to see. Yeah, and a good lesson includes this, this, and this. Other people go in not looking for things that they believe, but looking at what's happening in the room. If you really believe in dogma, you're walking to a classroom saying, oh my God, look, this is not anything like dogma. This person is using an electronic whiteboard. And regardless of the brilliance or not of the lesson, I've seen people coming out saying it was terrible because it wasn't dogma. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not putting dogma down, by the way.
How can you make sure that what is kind of accepted, the standard in your school, is not just something that someone likes or thinks it's a good idea, but something that everyone is kind of on the board with? Sorry, so we've got another comment.
If you're a CELTA trainer, you get standardised in some way with videos and things. I think it's the same thing with looking at feedback, the way it's written, having regular meetings amongst all the people who are doing observations and talking about and looking at how you write them up and give feedback, and then you can identify those differences and try to standardise to some degree, but obviously you will have differences in the manner you do it.
Our answer was actually standardization, because when we started in the first year, we had a couple mentors who had no observation experience or no kind of giving feedback experience, because with many of the other tasks, you will end up giving feedback. And we had an observation training, which was fantastic, really good, long handout, excellent ideas, and he just didn't do it. When the then director of studies was looking at the feedback, he realized that people had really, really different ideas. So what we ended up doing this year is doing the first full, some kind of observation, whether that was a peer observation, a mentor observation, a formal observation, completely together from the pre-observation chat to the feedback chat, everything together, and both mentors producing all written documents and comments and comparing and then talking about that. And something else that we do is regular meetings, but this kind of ties in with the second one.
I always ask mentors not only to send me the documents, so the written records, but also to come to me and speak in person, so to report.
Can you hear
somehow.
okay?
So this is how I somehow keep track of all 50, 60 teachers.
I do the same. So I would have individual meetings with one mentor, tell me about the 10 people that you mentor, and I also have access to all the files and all the documents that they produce. And this kind of seems to do the trick, although...
The way we've set up our mentor program, the mentor-mentee relationship is also is almost on par with a doctor-patient relationship. I'm a mentor with 3 mentees. The development work I do with those and the problems they have, I don't pass on to my DOS.
What do DOSes think about that?
We were talking about where we work. It's the line manager would have like 9 or 10 line managees, as they're known. But I was thinking a mentoring system would be separate to that. And I think for us, what the mentoring system you've put in place is really what we do as line managers. And I think a mentoring system like that is a different idea, that therefore there is that element of a different relationship they can develop and talk to other people without it going to the DOS, because it doesn't need to always go to the DOS. I think that's what, for me, mentoring would be more about that. Line managing would be more about this observation and developmental work.
I agree that there's management line, but there's a developmental line. But I'd really, really like to think of this one as the developmental line. If you really, really want the management line, maybe I'd say the PDI, because that has things like reliability, flexibility, punctuality. But I mean, when someone said it's things that there's no fear, you can tell that to anyone. I mean, I know it's odd coming from me, but I'd like to think that I'm not incredibly scary. And I really do want to know what my 50 teachers are up to. And on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that if someone says, okay, this is between you and me, I don't really want you to go, oh, is my time up? I don't really want you to go and tell Anna about this. I'm sure that will stay between the mentee and the mentor. Something else that I think we might have a different system that slightly overlaps is staff representatives. So if someone does have a problem with their line manager, that person would go to the staff rep, not to the mentor. And that's something that if it's a problem with me, okay, right. So if it's a problem with me, I wouldn't know about it. It would go to my line manager. Okay.
For me, it's not about having problems. I mean, the people I line manage, I have an established relationship with. It is developmental, and of course, I have to do the PDIs and everything else as well. But I think if you're looking at mentoring as something else, because it just seems a lot of that stuff is, you've included PDI, and so it's not just mentoring. That, do you see, I see it as something different, that's all. I think that's management. you know, PDI, observation, development, that's all, that's management. I think mentoring is more personal, perhaps, or separate to that.
Could you give me just an example before I pass you on to Roger? Sorry, one example of mentoring that is
okay.
not
So if for example a teacher hadn't taught IELTS before, they would observe another teacher for 2 weeks, and they would establish a
that's
mentoring.
part of the mentoring, because that would be your reason to peer observe someone who has taught IELTS before.
Okay, so but that person, what we're saying is, when they're observing that person, they become mentee, mentor. That's the relationship they have.
Okay, our system, I think we try to think of it as a longer term thing. So of course, I mean, there is all kinds of collaboration, and we could call each of these, you know, people who share a course. One of them is more experienced, the other one is less. That could be called mentor, mentee. We try to reserve the term for this structured system that we kind of work out. Does that answer your question? Okay, Roger?
I mean, if we're unsure about, you know, what we all mean by it, sitting here, it obviously means that, you know, the same will happen in your school, or potentially will. Consequently, some kind of role definition, as I say. You know, the difference between a management line, a PDI line, development line with a mentor, and so on, these need to be clearly defined. And I saw a really interesting example of this in a night school in Portugal, in Coimbra. And there were 2 ADOSs there, and they'd got fed up with teachers just bombarding them with questions and things, and, you know, all of the time. So what they did, they put up these 2 great big posters about who does what and where your responsibilities lie in the staff room. And they negotiated this with the teachers, by the way, and they all produced it together, stuck it on the walls. And any time someone came along and said, they just pointed to it, it was not an example like, you know, that's not my job, mate, find out for yourself. It was not that. It wasn't any kind of abdication of responsibility. But it was a clear definition of roles and responsibilities. And it worked brilliantly in Coimbra. It wasn't a mentor system, but mentoring was within that. Anyway, my point, I suppose, is just role definition and everybody being absolutely clear what you mean by it.
A couple of teachers keep cancelling the agreed developmental task. How should the mentoring system deal with this? 2 minutes, because it's a short question, and there is an easy answer. No, there isn't. 2 minutes. Right, sorry, I'm going to cut this short. These are the things that we have tried, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they haven't. So actually putting the agreed task on teachers' timetables, so when we send out the timetables on a Friday, they can see it, and they go, I have to do that. Record keeping, so maybe when I send the next email, I'll say, you know, we were going to do this in November, and then we never had the time. Can we do this next week? And something that we are considering doing actually at the moment is maybe if someone keeps doing this for a while, then you could kind of do a midterm, half-term PDI kind of thing and address it so that they understand the seriousness of it, and hopefully that will bring about change. Any other ideas you had?
Opt out.
They could opt out.
Of the system, they could.
Perhaps it's the wrong task for them, so you may have to rethink and go back to the drawing
Okay,
board.
try with a different task.
Also, when we do PDIs, we have to, our targets have to be smart, so they have to be timed as well, so they have to achieve them by a certain time. So if there's a reason, you know, then we can go back within 1 month, 2 months as well. So follow up.
Okay.
And I think it's just finding out what the problem is. I think once you actually know what the problem is, and that doesn't have to be done in, you know, you're going to catch them somewhere around the school, presumably, because they're in teaching. Just find out, then the solution becomes kind of clearer, doesn't it, really?
Okay. And the last one, last but not least, money. Yes. How do you budget for all the work that the mentors put into the system? So in our case, just to remind you, the mentors are DOS, ADOS, senior teacher, teacher trainers. This could be different in your context. How can you budget for all their work? 2 minutes. I guess we could be talking about this for hours, which is why I left it as the last one, because I'm sure by now everyone is kind of focusing on pub. Was it King's Arms? I think it was King's Arms, yes. We'll be there in a minute. In our context, so the DOS and the ADOS jobs are kind of desk jobs. There's a little bit of teaching involved, but we find the time to do the mentoring, so no extra money. You organize your day better. Our senior teacher should be on 25 hours. He usually isn't. and my director hasn't tried to talk to me about it yet, so I guess that's a good sign. He's usually on 22, 23 to kind of allow for his mentoring duties. What's going to happen if the financial situation changes in Hungary, as it could very easily? I don't know, but it's working fine at the moment. And the teacher trainers as well, they are supposed to do a certain number of teaching, certain number of hours, and we take the mentoring into account. Questions about this or very different ideas?
I think as long, going back to, I think, is it Roger?
It is.
Yeah. As long as it's defined in the role of when they first start the job, it's as long as it's within what they're expecting, it's not on top of, then those things work.
Okay. Rather as a kind of work in progress, as it has been said many times today, a work in progress that kind of changes in response to teachers' needs. In our context, it would be a lot of teachers straight off the CELTA, as we're a teacher training center as well, so they will need a lot of support. The resources we have, so the things that I just meant about, will I have a senior teacher next year? Will I be able to give him 22 hours as opposed to 25? And the kind of teaching culture, which in our case is part-timers everywhere. If you make a part-timer happy, they will try very hard to make you happy in return and kind of, you know, prefer your institution to other ones. So we like to think of it as a system that benefits teachers because they develop professionally, educational management because we have better teachers. It also helps me with the recruitment process. When I tell someone about the mentoring system and how they react, whether they go, or they go, exciting, my other school doesn't do that, will tell me a lot about what kind of teacher they are. And the customers as well is a unique selling point, like the personal study program in Newcastle. Okay, just before the pub, if you could take 2 minutes to talk about, is there something, some element that you could take away and try out in your school, or if not, why not? For the last time, 2 minutes. Okay, how about you can go and continue this discussion in a pub about all the elements of the mentoring system you'd like to keep. Sorry. Something else really important that I forgot to put on the slides, apart from the branding elements, is my email address, but it's easy to remember because I'm the DOS at IH in Hungary, so it's dos@ih.hu, should you have any questions. Thank you very much.